So for today's video, I'm going to be discussing the 2K coming up tomorrow, and this preview is going to be going and I guess brought to you by CESN. And so to start off, I want to say that this bracket that I've pulled up is basically the top 32, but based on seeding. So some of these teams aren't going to be exact, right? And some of these teams may lose earlier in the 2K, something like that, or some sort of upset. But these are the top teams that are in it right now. Um, so I'm just going to kind of break down like what I think about some of these teams and what I'm looking for in the 2K tomorrow. So the first team that I'm going to be watching is OpTic, and that's just a pretty easy topic to discuss because for OpTic, it's just can they win again and will they dominate? I know either yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, OpTic went over callouts for the first time, which is really interesting considering how much they dominated. And obviously, like when they say go over callouts, I think that's blown out of proportion a little bit because OpTic going over callouts is important, but all these players are playing the game have been playing the game since it came out and things like that. So it's not like they don't have callouts already. It's just that this is the first time they're really clarifying and making sure all their callouts are perfect, which I definitely think speaks a little bit to how good they are, but overall, I don't think that people should be like freaking out because like OpTic they weren't even trying or something like that. Like they were obviously trying. They obviously knew callouts. They were just clarifying them. But again, the point that I'm bringing up with OpTic is they are going to be in position to win another 2K. And if they can win another one, then obviously I think it's going to be pretty clear that they are the best team in the game this early. Um, but moving forward, some other teams I want to talk about. I think Next Threat is interesting because Next Threat made a roster change, obviously. Proofy has left Next Threat. He's gone to Era to replace Fears. And Next Threat has brought in Mochilla, who's a player who he's another player who's kind of been on the like cusp, I think, and he's like weird because he's always been really good at the game in my opinion. Like he's always been a really good AR player, but he's for some reason just never gotten a really good chance. So I think it's interesting that he's going to find himself on another team that is what you would consider like a top AM team. Like I think all the players on it might be pros individually, but I think it's so hard to determine who is a pro team and who isn't right now in Call of Duty. But obviously because we've only had online tournaments, there's not been a real LAN yet. But I think overall I wouldn't really consider their team to be a pro team by all senses. I mean, I think Ricky obviously is a pro because he's very well established, but like you look at Sensor who hasn't played in a while, like he was a pro player, sure, but I think right now it's kind of hard to say like Sensor outright is a pro player. And then obviously you could kind of say the same thing from Mochilla, except I think Mochilla is a little bit more towards Ricky than he is Sensor in the fact that he's been on some really good teams. And I think Mochilla has actually played Pro League games, at least in Black Ops 3, I know he did. I'm not too familiar with Infinite Warfare. Um, but so he's got that going for him, right? So Next Threat is going to be an interesting team, especially again since they didn't make it in the last one. They were knocked out very early in T64, so they really need to have a good finish here to keep up with the pro point race. Another one I want to talk about, I think, is probably, I mean, Luminosity is interesting, just from the aspect that they got second last time and they're going to need to make a really good push again. Also here, I'm looking at Echo Fox, who of course lost to Parasite's team in a best of 5. You'd really hope that they can have a better performance, and I think they will. I think they will do significantly better this time. Uh, that being said, if they do get to top 16, they'll play Parasite's team, who on this bracket is actually named 100 Thieves, and that's not confirmed, but that is, of course, heavily rumored. So Echo Fox versus the quote unquote 100 Thieves team will be playing off again in T16, which is exciting. And then Team Caliber, who had a top 4 finish, they come in at the 3 seed. They're going to have a pretty hard bracket, to be honest. And the reason they have a hard bracket is because the way that it worked out for them, they've got in what would be, let me see here. So Team Caliber will have an easy round T32, a pretty easy round T16, but then once they get to top 8, they're going to either play Nagafen's team or Evil Geniuses, it looks like, which are two very good teams. Obviously, Nagafen's team, of course, is still looking for a permanent fourth, but the other three players, pretty good players overall, and you would definitely consider them to be like a team that you would expect to make Pro League, I think. And then, of course, Evil Geniuses, uh, you know, I think is probably a top 4 team in the game when they can get everything figured out, and it seems like they do now. Like I said before in my last video, during their kind of like the kind of like off week in between when they were scrimming, they were talking about things that they had kind of figured out, and that they think that the things that they have learned are going to make them like really dominant. So we'll be able to see that in this sort of official competition to see if that really is true. And then the other thing is then on the other side where they would play someone for top 4, I believe it is, or maybe this is top 8. Excuse me. Yeah, this is top 8. So they would play Echo Fox or they would play Nagafen's team or Evil Geniuses for top 8 or top 16. Excuse me. On the other side of the bracket, if they do make it all the way to top 8, they would be playing most likely either Envy or Faze, and Envy and Faze actually play T32 in the T32 matchup because Faze lost so early last week, which has kind of skewed the bracket in a bad favor. And I think Envy is probably better than Faze. Like, I would definitely put Envy to be the team that makes it to that top 8 matchup. But I think it's really hard to see Team Caliber kind of coming back to T8 again. Like, I think that is very I think that's going to be very hard for them to do because I think Evil Geniuses is going to figure it out. And if Evil Geniuses doesn't quite have it, Nagafen's team is probably going to be pretty good. And then even if they do get to T8, I think Team Envious is actually like really good. I know the date I'm recording this video, which is November 18th, so yesterday, November 17th, they played in the $3,000 Prime, and they ended up making it to the finals when they played the team known as Saga, which is the 4 Canadians, Gunjar, and Gunjar and his team. So that's another team that I'm looking out for sure. I think E United's a good one as well because they obviously kind of threw that series away against E6. So you would kind of expect E United will probably be a top 4, top 8 team again. So they're certainly on the lookout. And then I think the last team I really want to talk about is E6 because they are the 4th seed. Can E6 repeat it? So the thing with me, for me, the thing for me is that E6 is in some ways, I think, a better team than Team Caliber. As far as I could see E6 making top 4 again if like they don't necessarily need like the bracket to go their way for that to happen. And I definitely could be wrong against Team Caliber, right? That's why this is a preview, right? Because I think Team Caliber could definitely come out and do it again, and then I'll say, okay, I think Team Caliber are legitimate. But right now, I don't think Team Caliber are legitimate as a top 8 team. I think they had a very lucky bracket considering they didn't play Echo Fox. And Parasite's team, we found out pretty good. They've been a lot better since they got Study, I will add. But I think that if they can get top 4 again, if Team Caliber gets top 4 once again and plays OpTic in that top 4 matchup, then, or excuse me, they would not play OpTic. I believe they would play the LG side of the bracket, I believe. So if they play LG, then I think they're in really good shape. I think they're in a really good place for pro points, but then also for being considered probably a team that'll make the Pro League. But then, like I said, so E6, they're kind of the other way, where I think E6 did overperform, but I think they're actually a top 8 team. Like, I think E6 is a team that will make Pro League, despite the fact that they do not have the names. Decimate, not a huge well-known name, I think, in the Call of Duty scene as far as, like, the casual fan or as far as, like, top pro players would be concerned. Obviously, Dashi, who is young and very good. You'd love to see him kind of develop on boots, which I think he's done so far. And then, of course, they have Bevels as well, who's another player who is not too well known, but is a very good player in his own right, which is why I think it's so great that this E6 team is coming out and being really good because we're getting some new names that we've gotten every year, but we're finding them at the beginning of the year. Similar to how we have in other games. Like you think about Advanced Warfare, for example, when Hugh came out with Team Carnage, like they played that online 2K and he dropped like 60 kills in the first 2K or something. Like people were like, who is this kid? Is he just an onliner? And then he goes to LAN, almost carries T Carnage into pool play, and it's just like, okay, so this kid's the real deal, right? That seems to happen in every Call of Duty, that there seems to be a breakout players at the beginning, right? So like Infinite Warfare was United, and then obviously in Advanced Warfare, like I said, it was Carnage, but then it was also that were they under STD, I believe? It was like that TJ Halley team that I think Temp was on as well. But I know TJ Halley was on it, and excuse me, that team like ended up doing really good at UMG Orlando, if you guys remember. So yeah, it's good to see new faces coming out early, because that usually, when they come out early, that sets them up for a big like full year, which I think E6 has been missing. Like they've been a pretty good team since Advanced Warfare, since that famous match against OpTic at UMG California. But then of course they didn't compete really in Black Ops 3 because General wasn't old enough, and it's kind of like it's General's org in a sense, right? So if General's not there, then the team isn't really there, and obviously since his parents and I guess he's part owner as well, but it's like his parents and family are like running the org, I guess. um so yeah, so it's good to see them back, and I think they could finally maybe have a good year this year if they do get these kind of like young star performances from Devils and from Dashy and Decimate. And then of course we all know General's gonna shoot well. He's always been a really good AR player. um So I think kind of maybe the last team I want to talk about. Uh, let's see. I'm just trying to look through the bracket. I think. Yeah, I mean, I think I pretty much covered all of them. I think one more thing I'll say is for FaZe Clan. Obviously, they are very behind in pro points. Like I said before, they really are going to have to show up. They're in a similar position to Next Threat in a sense, where this 2K is like not make or break for them, right? But this is the thing where if FaZe does not have a good event, like if FaZe loses this T32 to Envy, we're very possibly going to see FaZe have to play through the open bracket at the first event of the year, which would be crazy. Like to think of the names on that team, like you've got Replays, a world champion, Attach, a world champion, Zuma, obviously like a very, very good player, and who am I missing? Oh, and Priesta. Like, those are four really good players, and for them to have to play through open bracket because they can't perform online, like, that's pretty crazy in my opinion. Like, they really, really need to perform in this 2K, because obviously after this there'll be, I believe there's one more that helps determine who's into. I think the format is there's one more to after this to determine who the pool play automatic bids are. And then there's a fourth one before the event, and that's for open bracket seating, but it does not affect the teams in pool play. So realistically, man, sorry guys, I'm a little bit sick. But realistically, if FaZe does not make this like deep run in this 2K, they have to essentially win like the next 2K to make pool play, or be like I think they'd have to get top 4, or definitely, like definitely top 4, maybe even have to make the finals just to make sure they get into pool play. Because that, like, a T64 or T32, whatever they finished last time, and then there would be another T32 finish here if they lose to Envy. I mean, that's pretty crazy to think about. So, overall, I think we're in for a great weekend, or I guess a great day, I should say, for the 2K tomorrow. And I really hope that we see some upsets again, because, I think upsets online are kind of fluky in a way, but I do enjoy them because it kind of shows me new names that I can look out for. Because now, like last week when we had Amity, who ended up losing to OpTic, they came kind of out of nowhere. And now I've seen a lot of those players playing like deep into online tournaments and things like that. And especially once they go to LAN, because they'll go to UMG Dallas, I assume. And once they go to Dallas, we'll find out if they're the real deal. And then if they keep performing the way they have now, they'll make it to pool play. And then if they can't perform online like they did the first time, of course, this is the Korean Macros team, by the way. I think I said Amity on accident. I did not mean that. I meant the Korean Macros team, with Stumpy and Brolic and two other players that I honestly can't remember the name of. But they will, if they can perform, they'll make a very big leap going forward for their confidence and for their team, especially if they make pool play. Because if you make pool play, then right off the bat, you're a top 16 team, or maybe it's top 20. I'm not sure how the pool play system works yet. So, top 20, maybe top 16 team, and you can, basically set yourself up to be, you can set yourself up to be in a great position going forward for the rest of the year. And especially with Pro League, you got to finish as high as you can, especially at those lands, because that's where or not all, but most of the pro points, the majority of them are coming from, and you really have to perform on land, which I think is a great system for Call of Duty to, make 2Ks worth something, but make the lands very important, and that's what they've done. So you really hope that as myself, like as a casual fan, or not as a casual fan, but like as a fan of not a specific team, of like just the ecosystem as a whole, seeing new teams come up, or like going to LAN and seeing a team that no one's really heard of or never expected to do good just like outperform crazily, and then just kind of burst onto the scene the way E United did, the way E6 did in Advanced Warfare. That's what people really want to see. That's what these teams, like, that's what people really want to see from these lands. That's what really gets crowds excited, is when some team, like if this Korean macro team goes to LAN and they beat Faze on LAN, like, the crowd's going to go crazy. It's going to be like, whoa, like, what just happened? How did Faze just lose to this team? Like, is Faze bad, or is this team legit? Like, nobody knows. And then we have to watch them again and keep seeing, like, can they keep doing better? Can they keep, climbing up the ladder and becoming a top 8 team? Like, that's the most exciting part, I think, about this Pro League, is that every match and every game really does count, because all of the pro points, like, there's a jump in pro points for every position you finish at lands and at these tournaments. So overall, like I said, it's going to be a great 2K, I think, and I'm really hoping we see some upsets. But more than that, I hope that the teams that should finish well do, because I think seeing big matchups is really exciting as well. And last thing I want to say is I hope that MLG does have plans to stream it, because I think having broadcasters sit down and actually stream the matches is really good to get a sense of how CODcaster works, and I think it's important for casters to be very prepared. Not that I'm not saying that they aren't. I'm just saying that this is a good way to prepare, because it's literally an official competition for, pro points and money. But also that you'd love to see, like the actual matches, right? Like, we didn't even see the finals of the last 2K because no one on OpTic was streaming and no one on E6 was streaming. So, like, I hope that either MLG sets up a stream, or, B, a caster like Courage or Maven, if Courage and Maven just sit down and cast matches all day, that'd be really awesome. Or C, players actually stream. So I hope one of those things happens, and overall, I hope we have a great 2K.